Another part of our massive government incorporated is Amtrak, our government railroad. It was created 40 years ago after a senator said a government rail company would be the last great hope to save rail passenger service. So how's that working out for us? Randal O'Toole of the Cato Institute specializes in transportation. How's it worked out for us? We still have passenger trains.
We do have passenger trains, and they're hemorrhaging money. When Amtrak took over, the Congress actually believed that it would be able to pay for itself, that out of rail fares. And at the time, rail fares were cheaper than airline fares. So they thought they'd get a lot of customers. But since then, airline fares have dropped dramatically, rail fares have gone up, and the costs of running Amtrak have gone up even faster, so the subsidies are huge. And
well, let's break this down. They
Okay.
thought that the costs would go down because costs often do, and they thought they could manage it better. Government always thinks that. Could make the same argument for government health care. But they didn't regulate freight rail. And there we have this chart. The prices did go down. If we measure this from the beginning of Amtrak prices went up, freight went down.
And if you look at the chart, you notice that they stayed about the same until about 1980 when we deregulated the freight lines. We got the government out of regulating the freight lines, and then freight went way down. But with government regulation on Amtrak, Congress imposed telling Amtrak how they have to manage their labor and where they have to run trains. The cost just went up.
And one result is that they run trains from New Orleans to Los Angeles, for example. That's the most expensive subsidy. You've ridden this train.
I've ridden this train. It goes through a desolate landscape. It takes a long time, and it only goes 3 days a week, and it has the lowest ridership of any major Amtrak train and some of the highest costs.
So get rid of it.
Get rid of it, except for there are politicians whose district it passes through who want to keep that train going.
So the result is the ticket price is $452. So this is a train ride for rich people. You can fly there much more cheaply, take the bus much more cheaply. Plus, the taxpayer pays a subsidy of $437 a ticket.
It's 4 times as great as flying.
Now, the government lovers would say, well, the private transportation gets a subsidy too. The taxpayer makes a contribution to flying and driving.
There are subsidies to flying, but those subsidies do average to about a penny a passenger mile as opposed to 27 cents a passenger mile for Amtrak.
So why don't they privatize Amtrak?
Well, they privatized railroads in other countries. Japan privatized its railroads, and they're now making a profit. Britain privatized its railroads, and while they do get some subsidies, for the most part, they're being very innovative, and they're attracting more passengers faster than European railroads.
And making a profit.
And making a profit. And if we privatize the passenger trains here, I think we would get some passenger trains that would be much better than Amtrak. We might get fewer passenger trains. But the irony is that Anthony Haswell, who's called the father of Amtrak because he originally proposed to create Amtrak back in the 1960s, now believes it was a mistake and thinks we ought to privatize it. Politicians want to hang on, politicians want to control so that they can claim that the reason why you have a passenger train to ride is because you elected them and you need to vote for them again.
Another of their arguments is trains are green. The train is clean.
Well, trains, most Amtrak trains use diesel locomotives, and they use the same kind of fuel that cars and trucks use, and they pollute. They use a little bit less energy than the average automobile today, but automobiles are getting more.
And the bus?
The bus is the greenest of all. The bus uses about 1/3 as much energy and emits about 1/3 as much pollution as Amtrak for intercity buses. And it's not just green. There are bus routes all over the country where the local bus companies are providing faster, more frequent service trains that are government subsidized.
But the politicians don't find that glamorous, and they don't control it, so they're not as thrilled with buses. Last point, a criticism. In case our viewer about him likes big government. The interstate highway system is perhaps the single biggest government intervention in the economy. Reading O'Toole, that's you, you'd think it was a wonder of the free market.
Well, the interstate highway system worked. It was a government program that did work, and it worked because Congress said, first of all, it's going to be fun to users. We're not going to have general taxpayers fund it out of gas tax. And second of all, we're only a wad of money and then build it and hope the money comes. If we had designed Amtrak the way we designed the interstate highway system, or we put it on a pay-as-you-go basis, we didn't. We decided to have the government was the problem.
Well, I ride Amtrak to Washington. I don't deserve it, but